If you're in trucking, something that happens to all of us sooner or later is that we get sick on the road. There's just no avoiding it. If you're living in a truck days and weeks at a time, it's inevitable. You get sick if you're at home sometimes, but if you're living in the truck, sooner or later, you're going to get sick while you're out on the road. There are a few things I'm going to tell you that you need to remember. The first thing is, stay calm and assess the situation. Find a safe place to park, hopefully one with lots of lights and lots of people around. Land there and decide whether you're going to ride it out for the duration or whether you're going to need a hospital. If it's something like the flu, you can just probably ride it out. But if it's something major, you need to be able to call 911. And if you're going to do this, don't wait too long, because that can be crucial too. If it's something that you think is going to need a hospital or surgery or something like that, don't linger. Call 911, because it's going to take them a while to get to you, and it's going to take them a while to get you to the doctor. So don't wait too long. It's going to take the ambulance a while just to find you at the truck stop, because all those trucks look the same to those guys. So make sure you leave them enough time to get to you. Believe it or not, guys have died in their trucks because they wouldn't call 911. They just lay down and thought they'd ride it out. They hadn't assessed the situation correctly, and they needed help. And by the time they needed help seriously, it was too late to call for help. Something else to remember, whether it's been a hospital visit or whether you're just lying in your truck recovering, take the time for a proper recovery. You don't want to get back on the road feeling weak as a kitten, a little bit disoriented, not quite yourself, because your reaction time is down. All sorts of things won't be clicking right yet. Give yourself a chance to fully recover before you get back on the road. If you feel like you're going to need a few days downtime to recover, be sure to call your dispatcher and your family to let them know. And if it's going to be something even more major than that, be sure to let everyone know as well, so they know where you are. If you feel illness coming on when you're driving, you've got to be able to assess the situation correctly. You've got to decide whether you're going to be good for 100 miles, maybe to get to a safe truck stop, or if you need to get off the road in 5 or 10 minutes. Be sure to assess that situation correctly, because you don't want to be passing out at the wheel when you're on the road. So you've got a critical decision to make there. Assess just how bad your condition is. And while you're assessing that condition, pick up the cell phone, let your family know, and let your dispatch know where you are, that you're feeling poorly. Keep them posted as much as you possibly can. But the main thing is to get yourself safely off the road. Then, if you're able, make those calls. When in doubt, get off the road. Safety first. And don't let your dispatcher push you to keep going. If you feel you're getting to the point where you're unsafe, forget about the load and the time schedule. Get off the road. Your safety comes before the delivery of the load. Something else I've always done is carry a little bit of a medicine kit in the truck with me for situations like this. Now, I never kept anything in here that could make me drowsy or incoherent, but it helps at times to have a few basic necessities like Tums and aspirin and that type of thing, Band-Aids, just so you can be able to patch yourself through sometimes and get yourself home or get yourself to a safe place. So it's a good idea to carry a medicine kit or make your own little doctor's kit to have on board with you. God knows I can remember every time it happened to me, and it was bloody awful. I can remember one time in particular, and I did it to myself unknowingly. I stopped at the Pilot in Las Cruces, New Mexico for some fuel. They had a Subway there. I grabbed a sub because I was hungry and I wanted to get going. So I grabbed a sub and took off. I was headed for Nogales to load. Well, by the time I got to the Arizona line, I knew I had a problem. I was feeling rough. I was feeling really rough, and it was to the point where I was started to get disoriented. I knew I had a problem. I knew I wasn't going to make the nearest truck stop. The best I could do was a rest area just inside the Arizona line. I wheeled it in there and set the brakes, dove into the bunk, and lay there trying to assess just how bad my situation was. I knew I had food poisoning. Usually you can ride food poisoning out, and I was in the middle of nowhere anyway, so I thought, well, I guess that's my best bet. I don't feel like I need to call for help yet, but oh man, I felt rough. And I spent the next 2 days in that rest area, hanging out of the side door of the bunk, being sicker than a dog. And I can tell you it was god awful. And after the illness passed, then of course I was just weak as a kitten for the next day after that from heaving my cookies all over the parking lot for 2 solid days. So I felt like I'd sucked my toes dry. So it was 4 days before I was able to get out of there again. And that was just food poisoning from a Subway. So I hope it never happens to you, but be prepared if it does. Get someplace safe, ride it out, and call a doctor if you need one. And there's a lesson about being careful where you eat, because I wasn't, usually Subways are okay, but man, I haven't looked at a Subway since that happened. I'll never forget it, and I can't do Subway anymore. Another time, I had just finished loading in Toronto, and I'd hand-bombed on some freight, and it was pretty heavy freight. I was straining pretty hard. So I'd hand-bombed on some freight, closed the doors, headed for the highway. I wasn't 20 minutes down the highway, and I had pain in my gut like I couldn't describe, like pain to the point I was worried I was going to lose consciousness. Fortunately, there was a truck stop at the next ramp coming up. I wheeled in there, picked up the phone, and called the ambulance. And the ambulance came and got me, found me in the truck stop. I was able to get out of the truck under my own power, but man, I was in pain, and they ran me into the hospital maybe 5 minutes from the truck stop, fairly small town. And I'd given myself a hernia, hand bombing the freight, and then the hernia had started to strangulate. And that's a condition, had I left it alone, it could have killed me. Now, the pain was so great, there's no way I could have left it alone. But I was glad then I wasn't out in the middle of nowhere with that thing. I was glad I was still close to a major center where I could get to a doctor quickly, because I needed a doctor, and I needed him fast. And I was there in the hospital within a half an hour of when the pain started. And I sure was thankful for it, because it hurt like hell. I've had a couple friends that ignored the warning signs and died in their trucks from heart attacks. So if you feel anything coming on and you think it's going to be a serious deal, get a hold of the hospital, get a hold of the ambulance and the doctor as soon as you possibly can, because you don't want to wait too long, because I have personally known a couple of guys and died right there in the cab, and you don't want that to be you, and I don't want that to be you either. So stay healthy, drive safe, keep the rubber side down, and I will see you on the backhaul.